Okay, it's now time to introduce the speakers. Tonight we have Ann and Paul Schnell. Ann was a professor of environmental conservation in New York State for 21 years. Ann's experience with raptors includes 12 years as a director of banding operations at Braddock Bay in Hilton, New York. She has also led educational programs with raptors for many years and holds a general falconer's license. Paul is an award-winning photographer and naturalist. His photos have appeared in many periodicals, newspapers, and in 3 books. He's an active member of the Outdoor Writers Association. He acquired his first raptor in 1971 at the age of 12. You're younger than me. In the 1990s, he developed the Institute for Environmental Learning and has been involved in nature education for decades. He holds Master Raptor Bander and Master Falconer permits. Ann and Paul joined us, 2 or 3 years ago, and we're thrilled to have you back. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Very happy to see you here tonight. We're looking forward to sharing the birds with you.
I've got a quick demographic survey to perform. How many are from California? Raise your hand. Be proud. Loud and proud. That's right. Or at one point in time, California. Okay? Not that you drove down tonight just for this. Okay. How many of you are native Arizonans? Raise your hand. There you go. There's loud and proud. Very good. How many of you are from somewhere else? Raise your hand. Indeed. How many of you have lived in Arizona for more than 5 years? Raise your hand. 10 years. 20 years? 30 years? Okay, wow. That's amazing. How many of you are seasoned, avid bird watchers? How many of you keep life lists? How many of you feed birds? How many of you have been to our home or facility in Chino Valley? A+. Very good. Right answer, even if it's wrong. Very good. We like you. How many of you here are or were at one point in academia where you had the opportunity to influence young people, our most important resource? Raise your hand. I want to see it up there. Beautiful. Are there any hunters in the bunch? Any hunters? Beautiful. I've hunted all over the world, so they call me a hook and bullet naturalist. If you come to our house for dinner, you will eat javelina, rattlesnake, frogs, who knows. It'll be a game animal, and you will think this is that you've died and gone to culinary heaven. How many of you have grandchildren? Okay. How many of you have children? Okay, right, there you go. Well, you've had children, but maybe they didn't give you. I'm so delighted. I saw a couple of young couples with children. And from our perspective as teachers and conservation educators, that really truly is the future right there. And however, hi folks, come on in, find a seat, there's a few left. It's really important for all of us of any age to infect our children with nature. All agreed? Okay, very good. Thank you. We are on track. This is going to be a great program. I've done Audubon programs and all kinds of programs for many conservation organizations and civic organizations over the years, in addition to being members myself. The only reason we don't join this austere group is because we are traveling too much. We could give you $20 and say, have at it, but we'd love to tie in. We're close to retirement, and yet we are still running 7 days a week. This is wonderful for us because we love reaching out and sharing birds of prey. And this type of program tonight ain't a rehab message, folks. Back east, they said, you're the Howard Stern of conservation talk. And I said, why is that? Because you say things that no one else does. And I know why. Because I've done a lot of work for the Fish and Wildlife Service and the DEC back home. And I ask all my colleagues, how come you guys don't talk about hot button politically incorrect issues. Because we have a mortgage, we have a car payment, we're raising kids, we're going to college still. We can't afford to lose our jobs. And they say, you know, we just have fear. I have no problems with that. So I branched out after college in my 20s and said, oh, wow, I'm already a falconer, a photographer, and when I look in an audience, I'm undressing everybody. So I'm really comfortable around people. It's a lot of fun. I love children, though, because through the years I've been very blessed to teach and infect hundreds of thousands of our youth. Not here. We can't get education work in Arizona, and you know the reasons why. However, what we have done is reinvent ourselves, and that's what I want to share with you a little bit before we go forward and show you some really cool birds and talk about big issues today here in Arizona and around the world. And we love it when people call us after a program. We want to come up. Our friends are in town from California. 4 out of 5 of our clients are or were from California. They love wildlife and nature. We've had people already like the state attorney general. Attorneys, all right, whatever. Their money is green too. But we have a lot of great people coming up to the house. A lot of folks who were in teaching or sciences, very curious people. That seems to be the demographic. We don't take any money from the government, grants and so forth. We are paid to produce a product. And we think it's a superior product, money back guarantee if you don't like what we do or say. I shouldn't say that too loudly, but Ann's always says, you got to watch your mouth, and she always carries a roll of duct tape. She says, you sometimes move it too far. And so I say, well, I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I think that we're all of us here, kindred spirits, we're pushing for the same thing. Preservation of the last of the remaining biodiversity on our planet. Birds are amazing creatures. And what we brought tonight, we think, are the best of the best. I'm a master falconer. I've worked with birds of prey since 12, and I'm 59, so if you do the math. Ann has had well over 25 years experience. Largely, both of us do raptor research. When we moved here in 2015, I started building kestrel boxes and couldn't stop. I did stop at 50. We've got about 47 of them up, mostly around Yavapai and so forth. Is that right? And so we promote the Kestrel Project to our audiences of any age. You don't even need skills to do this stuff. I mean, really, you can slam one of these together in about an hour or two if you're blindfolded. And I'm more than happy. We're very accessible people. We have a website. You can call our home. We actually answer. And if you leave a message, I call you within 24 hours or minutes of seeing it on the machine. I don't own a cell phone. Very, very old school. But very attentive to people who reach out to us. I want to encourage you to build kestrel boxes because they're great for screech owls, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But before we begin, we are falconers. I'm a master falconer. It's just a stupid term in my world. I've had decades of experience, but I don't fly falcons. We're disparagingly referred to as dirt hawkers because we fly birds that follow us and chase and sometimes catch jackrabbits and pack rats and snakes and so forth in the dirt. These birds are so amazing, you can't lose them. You know, it's like the cousin that stops by your house and visits, and he's there for years. You can't get rid of him. But what we love to do at the conclusion of a visit is to fly the birds. And we don't need to do that. We're going to give you gloves. We brought little tiny mice, and I know some of you are going to want to do this. It's quick. This is slam bang interior falconry. So good luck with catching some stuff. But we're going to stay around long enough if some of you say, oh, could I at least put Coda on my glove and get a picture with her, or maybe this other spectacular eagle-like hawk? And we'll say, yeah. If they're getting a little antsy, we put them in and we go home, okay? But if you come and visit our place in Chino, we hope you do, you'll be with us for 2 hours. We have 40 acres, and we're doing a lot of work on the property to improve it for wildlife. And boy, it is like a Walt Disney movie every single day. You do that too, I'm sure many of you do. So that's a jumping off point. I'll be talking tonight. Bear with me if I have a grating voice. I'm sorry. I offered the mic to Ann 2 days ago. She says, no, I'll show birds and you talk. So welcome to the Ann and Paul show, the Dog and Pony show, whatever. But I think you'll like it for its content and for really cool birds. If she walks around and she says to you, like, if she does this to you and she says, oh, put your finger out and have our second little bird on your, really cool. We can do this because we're not rehabilitators. We're not a rescue, a rehab operation, or a sanctuary. Those words are not in our vernacular at all. We're researchers, we're writers, and that kind of stuff. But as falconers, we are legally allowed to share a bird with you. It's very uncommon for falconers to do that. They tend to be very self-possessed of themselves, self-important. We say, oh my gosh, no, let the older kids do it, us, aging folks, because that will, we hope, spark an interest in you to learn more, to drill down in the subject. That's why we do it. And it's also just really neat if you've never had a hawk or an owl or an eagle or a falcon on your glove, to try it. The next bird you see, a raptor, you go, I remember that. And you'll tell your friends excitedly, wow, I got to handle one. But falconry, for you Auduboners, for some of you, you might think, oh, I heard about falconers. They starve their birds into submission, and they're a disaster, and they steal birds and sell them to sheiks over in the OPEC countries. That's not true. If it was, I wouldn't be associated with the group. Largely, it's populated by really intellectual people, a little bit eccentric, but there's a lot of ornithologists and scientists. These falconers, 40 years ago, designed and developed the captive breeding techniques which have been used by the feds and the state agencies to restore osprey, eagle, peregrine falcon, and dozens of other at-risk species. Many folks in federal and state agencies are falconers, and they work with raptors. So that's where we come from. We keep our birds at the gold standard, not a zoo type situation or a rehab clinic type situation. These birds are treated, and very respectfully, but they're also treated like well-paid athletes. They eat better. Our birds, guaranteed, eat better than you do with the foods that they, but I've got to say, that's the level that we hold, and most falconers do as well. I wanted to share that with you while we now officially begin. So tonight's program is Raptors of the Southwest, I believe, and we selected 5 from our collection of 15 species representing, 15 birds representing 10 species, okay? 4 of them are falconry birds, kept under falconry permits, and one is kept under, the first one is kept under an education permit. These birds we cannot let you handle. They're little technical nuances of the law. And I think hopefully you'll appreciate some of the fillers that I'm throwing out there for you, because these are things you probably would never hear at most bird talks like this. So, our first little bird is what? An owl. Very good. I was going to say animal, vegetable, or mineral, right, Ryan? So it's obviously a bird. The order Avi, family. No. What is the kingdom? Phylum? Phylum Aves? Aves. Very good. So it's a bird. We know that. We know it's an owl. Next question, what species? Little too small for a burrowing owl. How did you know that, ma'am? Okay. She's honest. Karen got it because there it was. So this little northern saw-whet owl, Timber, right? That's a neat little name, was hit by a car. And did that one come to us from the University of Minnesota? No, this one's from Utah. From Utah, okay. We are part of a large national network of rehabilitators. So if we have a particular need for a bird, for our photographers, or for a particular message that we're developing, we will put that out. And because of our backgrounds and our facilities, usually we're kind of put at the top of the list. I'm proud to say that. That's not brag. But that's kind of how it works. They know where the birds are going. We try to house our birds in pairs. That's important for birds that need it. You know, raptors typically are they're solitary animals. They're predators, they're hunters, and so forth. We're going to be sharing one with you in a little while that is a social bird. And they too they hunt in packs, the wolves as they're called, the winged wolves, the aerial wolves. But owls, in Arizona, I believe there's about 15 species of owls. I just drew a blank on that one, in Arizona. In the whole world, we estimate there's about 210 species of owls. So owls as a group they're widely distributed, but there's not a lot of species comprising that group. There is, I believe, 48 raptor species in Arizona entirely. We brought a poster to illustrate some of the commonest ones. So that little bird was hit by a car. Many of them that are hit by automobiles, and they say that 1,000 more cars are added to the roads every day in the United States alone. 1,000 new car drivers on the road every day. So with all these cars and traffic, especially in wilder or less developed places, little birds like this, if they're not found, they end up, of course, as scavenged animals, or they just disappear, and so forth. But that little fellow, the northern saw-whet owl, usually lays 5 to 6 eggs per clutch. They are cavity nesters. You know what that is. They use hollow trees or surrogate nests like the one here. This one is actually designed for screech owls and American kestrels. These are the boxes that we put up in Arizona, and I did for 35 years in New York State, starting as a little kid. I don't climb trees as well like I used to. I need a ladder most of the time. My joints are broken, and I don't want to fall. When you get older, you break when you hit the ground. It's not the fall that kills you. And so this little bird weighs about 3 ounces, believe it or not. Birds have pneumatic bones, which is to say they are rather hollow. You could cross-section a bone and see all the little gussets that connect it and give it its rigidity. But bird bones, by design, are not solid like mammal bones. You get that, I'm sure. So about 3 ounces will probably live 10, maybe 12 years in captivity, but half that in the wild. So I want you to be aware that when we see hawks or owls in our travels, we think, oh, wow, that's really neat. But you're probably seeing one bird and 4 or 5 others have died for that bird that you've seen. They actually have constructed some really neat algorithmic tables showing the life expectancy of a bald eagle, for instance. Typically, we ascribe the 50% rule to raptors, which is for every one that is born and leaves the nest, or for every 2, one will live to be 1 year old. So half, 50% survival rate their first year. Now, you might say to me, I read articles where the first year bald eagles will have a 80 to 90% survival rate, and that is true. For a variety of reasons. But by the time they're 5 years old, when they're adults, and they have moved into the breeding population, maybe 75% have died. And it's not uncommon. And it's not, the deaths of raptors are not always ascribed to human activity, but in large measure they are, especially when you talk to rehabilitation centers that deal with a lot of birds that have encountered humans. We're a tough species. Yes, sir. How many die from impact? That's a great question. I don't have a direct answer for that, but largely, years ago, I read a breakdown from some rehab centers, and I would dare say that half of all raptors that go into rehab centers, half, are hit by cars. Oh yeah, and many times we'll never know. I can tell you as a falconer, we sometimes lose our birds if we get careless and fly large open fields like you might see in Arizona, where they hit barbed wire fences. As you know, songbirds today are really taking it on the chin. The lot of research back east has been done about on kills around cell phone towers and skyscrapers. In fact, we live up along Lake Ontario, the Lake Ontario shoreline, and I have seen songbirds washed up by the dozens. And what has happened is the birds have miscalculated. Many songbirds, passerines, as you probably know this, migrate at night. I've been out at night on my bicycle on a country road, a black country road, and I can hear the waves of songbirds overhead, literally over my head, chirping and peeping. Now they use radar ornithology to track bird flights at night. The point is that birds are at risk from hitting these large structures that we build all across the landscape. And it's tough. You'll go out and you'll see in the mornings, after the evening migrations, you might collect hundreds of songbirds around these towers. I always say Ann and I should be on Prozac because we work so closely with wildlife, and not as rehabilitators, but as researchers. And we know a lot of people that do this. And the numbers are just staggering. They really are. So our next little bird, another 4-ounce, the smallest falcon in North America. There's actually 13 species of kestrels in the world, not the accipiter type kestrels found in Britain, but honest to goodness falconid or falcon type kestrels. There's 13 species. There's one species of kestrel here in North America, but it has 17 subspecies or races, different tiny, minute versions of this little bird right here. This bird was transferred to Ann 2 years ago by a woman falconer who was leaving the country and didn't want to take it to Canada with her. And she asked Ann if she would like that bird. So we haven't flown that bird yet, but any time now, we're going to take him out and let him catch grasshoppers and crickets and dragonflies and chameleons and all sorts of lizards and things of that nature. In the wild, kestrels, formerly known as sparrowhawks, are mousers, okay? So if you have grassy areas around your home, this is where you should find these birds. Now, American kestrels have undergone very steep declines in populations around the U.S. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the population decline of kestrels. Very good. Great. You've heard it. And I strongly encourage you passionately, if you see kestrels in your neighborhood or in your travels, get a box or two up there. My gosh, that fellow right there, Muscle Man, he just got up. You'll climb a tree and help one of these fine folks, right, Ryan? There you go. I didn't ask if Ryan would build the box for you. A year ago, had you approached us when we were giving boxes away, I would have come over and sighted them for you. Problem is in Arizona, especially the Central Highlands, lots of pinyon pine and juniper, not optimal foraging habitat for American kestrels, okay? But it's great for western screech owls. We have 40 acres in Chino, where our home is up in the kind of the boondocks. We put 4 boxes up. Last summer, 2017, we had a screech owl hatch 4 eggs and had 4 babies. And they lived, and they left after 5 weeks, but they hung around for several weeks later. In that particular box, when we first inspected it, when it had just eggs, already the dad, they're phenomenal providers. We had a half a dozen tails from wood rats and about 4 or 5 tails from mice in the box. So you get a kestrel living in your yard or neighborhood, you don't need to put lights on and all this stuff that people do to keep the wood rats and mice from eating your wire connections. And so it's great. Several of our friends in Prescott, we put boxes up. In fact, we were at a party 2 weeks ago, and we had about 40 people in the yard in the driveway, and we put 2 boxes up in the Hartley's yard, only 20 yards distant, and there was a screech owl in each one. They had their heads out, and the people, mostly from California, they were just dumbfounded. They couldn't believe it that they were looking at a wild kestrel. And the disco lights came on about 7 o'clock, and it was kind of funny to see that. We thought one of them were going to start breakdancing. But they headed out at about 7:15, both of them, and they were doing their hunting. You get these birds in your neighborhood, and they do eliminate scorpions, tarantulas, snakes, small snakes, that is, all kinds of little mammals, and amphibians as well. Delightful little birds. Kestrels, my gosh, the ultimate mouser. These aren't great falconry birds, as you can imagine, unless you want to catch starlings, which, we don't like starlings unless you're a hardcore bird lover. We know that starlings have displaced and put the hurt on many native songbirds across North America over the last almost 100 years. And so kestrels in that respect can be trained to catch small birds. They're delightful little birds, and I'm hoping that Ann is going to let you put your finger. Oh, have you? Oh, good. Yeah. Tiny, tiny little talons. Now, what you'll notice are very characteristic of the falcon clan, and those are the moustachial stripes. We say that they function similar to the black that quarterbacks put under their eye, reduces sun glare. You'll notice that in diurnal, day-active hawks, falcons, eagles, that they also have kind of a prominent, almost Cro-Magnon brow. Some of my pals growing up said I had Cro-Magnon. A big head, a big crowd head, and Cro-Magnon brows, and that's probably true. So the brow actually acts like the visor on Ryan's hat. I'm picking on you, Ryan. That's okay. Okay, thank you. Good. It's always good to point out somebody you know in the audience, and And so they have that, but if you look at the back of Charlie's head, he has what looks like 2 dark spots. They're called ocelli, or false eyes, okay? And it's believed that those false eyes act as a detraction or a deterrent from predators that might take the male American kestrel for food. We're not sure. That's just one theory. We're still learning an awful lot about wildlife and the other occupants of our planet. Scientists estimate that there's 10,000 kinds of birds that share planet Earth with us. 10,000 kinds. Now, if you're a falconer or a raptor researcher, you like to dig down and look at what the risk is for these birds. Some authorities say that about 40% of all 73 species of eagles on the planet, 40% or more, are at risk of extinction in the next 40 to 50 years. You all, I'm sure, I take a lot of, you're supposed to know your audience, and I did some of that early on, but I'm sure most of you are aware that raptors, like all predators, either are found at the ends of food chains or at the tops of food pyramids. We call them apex predators, okay? And as such, they are very vulnerable to human activity throughout the entire food web. And we'll be talking about that in just a little bit. These little birds, though, are wonderful. And again, if you see kestrels in your neighborhood or in your yard, reach out to us. I would love to talk to you. I never forget a face. You're all recorded. But I'm not good with names, and it's not because I don't love humanity. I love people, and I love sharing and infecting people with a passion for conservation. Yes, I'm speaking to the audience tonight. I have a captive group of sinners in my church, so to speak. I'm with you, though. And so, if you call, I will interview you. And if it looks good, I will bring a box up. I'll do all the work for you. But only if we can relatively ascertain success in that box. Right now, our boxes are very successful at attracting screech owls. And that's fine, but screech owls are not at risk, and they are at risk here in Arizona and throughout the country. Some ornithologists, bird scientists, they believe that Cooper's hawks, how many here have seen or know Cooper's hawks? Oh yeah, they're ubiquitous, and they're ruthless. I mean, I have not anthropomorphic by saying that a predator should be eliminated because it interferes with something that I think is important. I don't do that at all. It's not in my wheelhouse. But Cooper's hawks numbers have increased over the last 30 years, and at the same time, kestrels have declined. So some people are noting that Cooper's hawks are hunting kestrel nest boxes or nesting trees. These are obligate nesters that require hollow trees to lay their eggs. Yes, sir? Could you say that? And so what? You know, that's nature, right? One predator survives at the expense of another, and predators hunt other predators. It is truly a jungle out there. The survival of the fittest is not some made-up fictitious silliness. It's the truth. And when you begin watching, truly watching and studying birds, or particularly raptors, you will see amazing things. You'll see the interrelationships that occur. And when we go into schools and we talk to children and the teachers, we always talk about the interconnectedness of life, and it's not some silly thing. But we also try to connect adults like yourselves who have all of this wisdom and knowledge to pass on, to try to infect young people today. You know, this is today's youth. Largely. Take 2 Tide Pods and call me in the morning. Look at here. And you know, everybody is selfies and cell phones, and they're a wonderful thing, I guess. I don't own one, as people know, but they can be a huge distraction from life and reality. And that's where you older folks need to come in and take them by the hand. Those of us who are now of a certain age, who had adults and other conservationists lead us by the hand and train and teach us, we're the next generation. And that's why we need you out there supplying and providing the opportunities that children need, the next generation of voters and environmentalists.
If I can use these at the same time, does that sound okay? Yeah, I guess it's okay. You're going to get Emily out? The reason that we are passing off the microphone and having Paul get Emily out is because I am not Emily's favorite person. And so Emily behaves much better with Paul than she does with me. And I want to tell you why. Emily is what we call an imprinted bird. Have most of you heard that term before? Okay, so you have some understanding of what it means. Unfortunately, that process of imprinting, which happens in the first couple weeks of the bird's life, that's when they identify by looking at their parents who they are, who they're going to look for as a mate. And when they imprint on a human, that's who they look for in the future for those things. It's irreversible. Once that is done, you cannot change it. And unfortunately, for birds like Emily, who are physically perfect, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this bird, but she will never be allowed to be released into the wild because she is an imprint. And what that means is when birds like Emily become sexually mature, they are not going to look for another Swainson's hawk as a mate. So from a biological point of view, they are useless in the environment. And it's very sad when that happens. So one of the things that we always like to point out is that you can actually take a young bird out of the wild for falconry legally when you have the right permits, etc., and you can train them without imprinting them. And this is extremely important when we're doing conservation projects with birds of prey. Everybody here's